All right, we're live. Well, welcome everyone to Being Patient's live talk. And today we'll be talking with Anthony Copeland-Parker, who's the author of the book Running All Over the World. And we'll talk about him and his partner, Catherine Elizabeth Popp, who's diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. So we'll be talking about their journey as well as their nomadic lifestyle of traveling all over the world and running marathons and half marathons all across different continents and countries. So, Tony, it's nice having you here, and thanks for your time.
Thanks for the invite. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to your folks here.
My pleasure. So, yeah. So, Tony, tell us about why you decided to write the book Running All Over the World, and what is it about?
The book Running All Over the World, Our Race Against Early-Onset Alzheimer's. I started writing that to a blog, runningwithcat.com, when we started traveling about 7 years ago. I was using that to try to have memories for both Catherine and I of what we did. I also wanted to inspire others to look at the diagnosis of Alzheimer's a little bit differently. Usually the doctor tells you that go ahead and have a routine, stay home. And a lot of times, since it strikes when you're in your high earning potential, your mid 50s, one individual, your caregiver, your spouse, loved one, usually continues working, and then you're left home alone to fend for yourself. I decided to use her passion for running and our love for travel, combine those two things together. And then also the fact that we would be together 24/7, so I could see any nuances of changes to be able to better compensate for them at the time, as opposed to, days go by that I wouldn't notice. And we did not set out to be on the road for this long. We were basically looking for someplace else to live. However, we were kind of like Goldilocks, and nothing was quite right every place we went. And there was always another race on the horizon. So we just kept continuing traveling, and this is where we are. So I took the blog and I took all that information and pictures and put the book together. And that's where we are.
Right. So the blog was really a way for you to document you and Catherine's journey of doing races and traveling around the world, but it was also a way for you to document her diagnosis, right, and how she's doing,
right,
the day-to-day things, right, and it's helpful to see it in writing, right.
Right, that's correct. And also for folks that were, reading it, they were looking at, oh, I wonder what it's like to be in Venice. And then I would have a description of when we were in Venice or on this cruise or this race. So I was also giving the readers a good information as to what they can expect if they went to those different places or did those things that we did.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, you mentioned that you and Catherine started traveling 7 years ago, right? And that was after Catherine's diagnosis of early onset Alzheimer's. Can you tell us a little bit about when did she first notice that maybe something was wrong, that maybe that she was having symptoms of Alzheimer's, and what did you notice as well?
Well, they say that people can start having problems 5 to even 10 years prior to the diagnosis. What folks have a tendency to do is compensate. In her job, she had her routine. She was using sticky notes and things of this nature to kind of compensate for what was going on. And unfortunately, or fortunately, she got a new boss who wanted to change things around and wanted things done his way. So her routine was out the window, and then it became a little bit more evident. And then, of course, stress came up. But I would say about a year prior to the diagnosis, and it was a simple task of balancing a checkbook, that I noticed that instead of taking 15, 20 minutes, it took almost all day. And I, at that point, mentioned to her that there was a problem. And then when the job's performance started waning, we wanted to have documentation so that we could protect her. So we went to a neurologist, and that's when they were able to go through all the testing and come back with the diagnosis of early onset Alzheimer's or like condition, because unfortunately, unless you have a PET scan done, you're not exactly sure of what the problem is.
Right, got it. Yeah, and her first the initial symptoms that you're describing, that was in 2013, right? And
That's
then
correct.
and then it was in 2014 that she got her diagnosis, right?
That's
And what
correct.
age, how old was she at the time?
Yeah, she was 53 when she got diagnosed. 7 years later, we celebrated her 60th birthday at the Kentucky Derby, so we had a good time there.
Right. And around the same time too, and you were working as a pilot, right? At the same time. But then you also had a medical condition around the same time of her diagnosis and her first symptoms, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that as well?
Yes, 2 years prior, I have to have, as being a pilot, you get a routine physical every 6 months. And my doctor at the point mentioned to me that I had a heart murmur. Some of them can be pretty much benign, but mine was the case that the aortic valve was not closing all the way and blood was regurgitating. And that's what he heard as a heart murmur. We monitored that for 2 years, and then we decided to go ahead and have open heart surgery. And I had that around the same time as our diagnosis. And I had my aortic valve replaced with an artificial valve.
Mm.
And that kind of led me to, maybe it'll be a good idea for me to go ahead and retire. I'd be able to help take care of her, and then we could, continue doing our races. As a matter of fact, I did a marathon in Berlin 3 months after having open heart surgery.
Right. And after after the surgery and after Catherine's diagnosis, the two of you retired, but you also sold your house and decided to travel the world, right? As we talked about earlier. Yeah, what led you and Catherine to make that decision? Because that's a big one, right? Because like you mentioned, doctors will tell patients to, have a routine and get things in order, right?
Yes, I'm the type of person that's going to research everything and look at alternatives. I like looking for a different way to approach different situations. So you have taken care of her, but also I needed to take care of myself. So I love to travel. I love to manage. I was a manager and a pilot. So me arranging for different trips to different destinations, being able to continue to run. Nobody said that running was not good for us. As a matter of fact, a lot of research has been done saying that folks with Alzheimer's should try to exercise 4 to 6 days a week. There's a lot of things that happen during that process. Inflammation is reduced, and also it helps to alleviate some of the tau proteins that are building up over the course of the day. And then also it gives a person a better sleep habit, because you're kind of worn out and ready to get some sleep. So during the sleep cycle, your brain is washed of those toxins and all. Breathing, you're getting a lot of oxygen in. The sweating, you're getting a lot of toxins released through your pores. And then the travel part I saw as seeing new and exciting things. At first, your long-term memory is not affected as your short-term memory. So if you can have something that is emotionally distinguished, that goes into your long-term memory. So you might get frustrated of something you can't remember, but at the same time, you have the great satisfaction of completing a race and or seeing something that was notable.
Right. And yeah, and you love traveling and racing and running races, and so does Catherine, right? And so, I mean, since you retired, that seemed like a good idea, right? And it's also a way for you to see new things, meet new people, and keep exercising, right? To stay active, which is so important, right?
Right, and also the socialization. People with Alzheimer's have a tendency to withdraw, and so we're on tours, we're interacting on cruise ships with other individuals. So she had plenty of opportunities to socialize. So that's also very helpful. And like you said, the seeing the new things and the challenges of going out and running these races. So we set goals for ourselves. Catherine had a goal to run a marathon in all 50 states. So we accomplished that last year and got that all done. So now we're going back around and we're doing a half marathon in all 50 states. As a matter of fact, we'll be getting state number 41 in November in New Mexico.
Right, right. And yeah, can you tell us more about like your travels around the world? Like what different countries and continents have you and Catherine been to since the both of you retired?
We've visited 82 different countries. We've run at least a half marathon in 35 countries. We've run at least a half marathon in all 7 continents. Catherine and I have both done the 6 major marathons, the 3 in Europe and also 3 in the United States. So we're always setting goals for ourselves to keep the challenge going. And unfortunately with COVID, when that hit 2 years ago, our travels overseas was limited, and we concentrated more on getting the United States done. We just came back from Berlin and Scotland. We went over there for the Berlin Marathon. Had a special place for me since I ran that 3 months after my open heart surgery. And we went with a group of folks that we've been traveling with over the years, the last 10 years. And then we went on to both Edinburgh and Inverness, Scotland. We did the Loch Ness 10K there. And then we came back to the States. We got back here last week.
Right. And is there a special marathon for that that's for Catherine, one of her like favorite marathon that Catherine has?
Well, I'll say that we have 2. One is the Chicago Marathon. That was her first marathon that she ran 23 years ago. And also she did it again a year later. And then the 3rd year she did it. That was the first time I ran Chicago. So we did that together. And then overseas, back in 2010, we did the Athens, Greece Marathon. That was the 2500th running of since Philippides did it back in 490 BC, and all the countries were there. So the 196 different countries had someone there to represent, and it was a fantastic marathon for us, very memorable, and that was around her 50th birthday.
Right, right. And yeah, and one question I had, and we were talking a little bit about this before the interviews, like doing all these travels, right? Like for some people with Alzheimer's, like traveling can be a real challenge, and breaking out of the routine can be confusing and overwhelming, right? I was wondering, how do you and how does Catherine manage that, and how do the two of you manage that?
She does really well. This last one was a little bit harder since we hadn't been overseas in 2 years. So you have the travel over there, and no matter what, it's going to last, 15 to 17 hours. We had to stop in Paris, change planes, and go on into Berlin. And then you have the time change, the 6 hours, so that throws off your circadian rhythms. That was a little bit more difficult than it had been in the past. But how I look at it is they ask you to do brain games, crossword puzzles to keep your brain going, Sudoku, things of this nature. So I joke with her and say that I'm always moving her cheese around. Every day she wakes up, she wonders where she is. And then she has to navigate, where's the bathroom, where we're going to eat, the different situations, and then following the instructions of going through TSA, going through security, getting on the airplane, getting off the airplane. But she does really find she's, traveled all her life. So this is something that she's used to doing. And then also, she knows that we're going to go someplace that's exciting and that she's probably going to see some people that she hadn't seen before.
Right. There's always something new to look forward to, right? For the both of you.
That's correct.
Right. And given that the both of you love traveling, like that keeps you all going.
Right. And I love managing it, setting up where we're going to eat, what flights we should catch, what hotel we should stay at. So that keeps me going, because it's a partnership. I have to take care of her, but also I have to take care of myself. I have to be doing things that I love to do. So that's how it's a mutual benefit for both of us.
Right. Yeah, and that's an important aspect of taking care of someone with Alzheimer's, or for that matter any illness, right? Is that the caregiver has to also be doing things that they enjoy, right? So that they can take, have the energy and the capacity to take care of a loved one, right?
That's correct. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what I was talking about in the book, can be applied to all sorts of different situations. It's not just for Alzheimer's. It's just looking at things and from a different perspective. Ours is somewhat counterintuitive, but it also works for us. It doesn't work for everybody. I was having a conversation the other day with someone who loved opera. So that would be their thing. They would, go to opera, review the operas that they had been to in the past, maybe go to a different city and see one they hadn't seen before.
Right. Like the message, it's not like everyone should go travel to 82 countries after they get, like a serious medical condition, right? It's just
right.
Your message is to keep doing what you love, right?
Right. What your passion is, and something that the two of you can do together that you're both passionate about. That's the thing. Don't leave your loved one at home. That's my message. You need to interact and be there for them. Not everybody can do it, but if you can, I highly recommend it.
Right. And Tony, I want to talk a little bit about Catherine's participation in the clinical trial. Can you tell us a little bit about how you and Catherine decided to join the trial, and what was that experience like?
Well, back in 2015, through alz.org, we've heard about a clinical trial called Mindset. It was in the third stage of the trial. So we were going to be participating in a double blind. You could get the placebo or the drug RVT 101. And for the 6 months, that's what we went through. We had to adjust our schedule somewhat because of the fact that it was very rigid on the timing of when you had to come back and the testing that needed to be done, both written tests, verbal tests, and also blood tests and things of this nature. We felt that the first 6 months that she did not get the drug, and they had an open label for the following year. And then the following year, it was quite obvious that she did get the drug. Unfortunately, the drug did not go any further past that stage because it did not meet the requirements that they had set aside. And that was they wanted to actually improve one's memory. It did not do that. It did help with cognitive skills. And, that was very good for us. If you can't have one, the other one is just as good as far as we're concerned. But they wanted to have a better memory of outcomes, and they did not get that. So after the year and a half, the trial was shut down.
Right. So the drug ultimately failed, like so many other, drugs being investigated in clinical trials, right? How did you feel about it when you found out that they had to shut down the trial and that Catherine could no longer take the drug?
I was devastated because like I said, I saw improvements, and she felt much better about the disease. She was able to do things that she wasn't able to do previously. It gave her a sense of well-being, And I was hoping, and I wrote, many letters to them to try to get them to continue. But once the research was over, the drug was removed, and there we were. We looked at other clinical trials. Actually, the one that was just released recently, we were looking at that clinical trial, but they were still in the same phase, which would have been a double blind. Chances are she would be getting a placebo, and that was intravenous, and I didn't want to go through all that again. So we would elected not to do that clinical trial.
Right, and you're talking about the Aduhelm,
That's correct.
the anti-amyloid drug that was recently approved by the FDA.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's still some controversy as to whether that's actually going to work, because it does remove the tau protein, but it doesn't go back and find out why it was being produced, because that's just a response. So you need to get back down to the root cause.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think the central question is, we know that Aduhelm is effective at removing the amyloid plaques in people's brains, but it's not clear whether that can actually slow the decline, slow the progression of the disease, and whether it can actually have any clinical benefits, right?
That's correct.
For patients. So, yeah. And yeah, so, and, I think to close off, can you tell us about, like, are there any words of advice for other caregivers who have loved ones living with Alzheimer's that you'd like to tell our audience? Any last words of advice?
Well, just kind of repeat something that I had said earlier, which was to find your passion, something that both of you love to do. Combine that with things that you can do together, and set goals for yourselves and challenges for yourself. The disease is a challenge enough, but if you look outside of it and realize that there's going to be many, many good years that you two can do things together, as opposed to it being a death sentence, it's a life lesson, and just continue to find things you can do together. If at all possible, if you're early on in your life right now, in your 40s, I would say really concentrate on getting ready to retire in your 60s. So if something like this happened, and it would just be a slight modification to your life so that you could retire and also spend the time together, as opposed to, putting off retirement and then something like this happens, and it kind of puts you in a bind. And just realize that this, like I said, there's going to be many, many good years together. That's what we've been doing, enjoying life.
And that's what folks, living with Alzheimer's or other types of dementia often tell me after they say, initially after their diagnosis, it feels like a death sentence, right? Like,
right.
Like it's the end of their lives, and it's hard to find hope from that, right? So
that's correct.
Yeah. So really, I love your message to keep striving towards your goals, right?
Right. And also, one last thing, running all over the world, our Race Against Early-Onset Alzheimer's is out there on all platforms: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and the audio book. I'll just take one quick second to tell you about it, because it's something that I wanted us to be able to cherish, is just driving down the road and listening to someone tell us the stories about some of the places we've been. And Catherine's smiling and laughing while she's listening to it. So that was something that that was a goal of ours. And the gentleman that did it did a real good job. He got my character and my sense of humor as he narrates our travels over the last, at that point, 5.5 years.
Right. It reminds you and Catherine of the good memories of traveling, right? And,
right, that's correct.
And what's to come too, as well.
Right, that's correct.
Got it. Well, and also part of the proceeds go to our donations, right?
Right, that's correct. I'm taking a portion of the proceeds from the sale of the book and going to donate it. to organizations that assist individuals with Alzheimer's and also their caregivers.
Got it. Well, thank you so much, Tony, for your time. I really enjoyed listening to you and Catherine's story.
You're quite welcome. I enjoyed reviewing it with you.
All right. Well, talk to you soon. Bye.
Okay, sounds good.